Well, here we are. Unfortunately,
Hello. Here we are.
this is
We
NBC
made it.
episode number what is this 8?
Yup.
And
Ocho.
we're here to talk about Halo.
Yes. Halo on Paramount Plus.
Uh, I don't really know how to intro this. I don't know.
Well, I've got some thoughts. I think for how to kind of preface the
You
discussion.
know what? You know what? Fine. You can take the reins on this episode. You're the host
Okay.
tonight.
Okay. So, I should say I've not played through the entirety of Halos 1, 2, and 3. I've played through all of Reach. I've watched friends play through it when the games came out. Something that I was always kind of like on the periphery of, but was really part of my childhood or anything like that. But I've kind of absorbed most of the lore and the story just through osmosis and through like the exposure that it did have. So I'm pretty familiar with like the overall story beats and a good portion of the lore. But that being said, I'm not like intimately familiar. I don't know every detail. There's still things that kind of appeared in this that I wasn't familiar with. But and I know you're coming from it with you have played all the games. You've played a lot of the games multiple times. I presume like you kind of grew up playing the games.
Hmm.
So you would definitely have a much deeper understanding of the world and the lore and the characters than I do. So it's just
I
kind of
do.
something worth noting from the outset. How do you feel about that summation?
Yeah. I mean, I've read most of the books. I've played all the games, uh, more than once. Um, Yeah, I know a lot about Halo. Halo's probably my favorite game series. Probably. I'd say it's pretty safe to say it is.
I think that's
It's
fair.
it's
That's
probably one
fair.
of my favorite fictional universes, regardless of whether it's game or movie or whatever.
Yeah, I would agree. I like it a lot. It's like one of those things that I've gotten into later in life. I think I've started to become more interested in it as I've gotten older. Didn't really have an Xbox as a kid, so it wasn't just didn't really have access to it. It wasn't for lack of interest. But I remember, going to friends' houses and playing it. But yeah, so we're gonna have I think two different perspectives that we're coming from. But that being said, I do think we will mostly have the same opinion of this show
I
after the
guess
first two episodes.
I guess we'll find out.
So yeah, I guess we'll dive into it. How do you feel about the first two episodes of Halo?
They're very, very, very bad. In fact, it took me about 3 times to finish the first episode, and then it took me 2 times to finish the second episode.
I see. I see. Yeah, I would say I have mixed feelings. I think there's one thing I want to say just about the show in general that will sort of like inform my thoughts and kind of my overall takeaways from watching the first two episodes. I think this show would work much, much, much better if it focused around its own characters set in this universe as opposed to this sort of like amorphous retelling of the games. There's a lot of even with like kind of like the surface level knowledge that I have about the Halo world, there's a lot of contradictions in the story that don't really make sense.
Do you think
There's
this
a lot of
would have worked
things.
better if this was like a prequel to Halo, starring
Yeah,
different characters?
exactly. That's exactly, and that's what it feels like, which is odd that Master Chief is even in it because it does feel like a prequel to the games, yet it's not. It's kind of like a retelling or something. I don't know. It's not
So
like
a
really
lot of the
delineated what it's
some of
even
the
going to be.
events in this show took place in the game's canon, like
Yeah,
20 something years before Halo CE.
I see.
So the planet gets attacked by the Covenant in 2525.
Okay. So it is basically a prequel in that sense, then.
Sort of. It's instead of being a
Yeah.
prequel, they're making all that take place in 2552, which is when the Halo trilogy takes place. So it's not a
Okay.
prequel, it's an extreme drawing out of the story of Halo. Like extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my cynical take. I think originally this show was probably pitched as being what I suggested, a original character set in the backstory of the Halo universe, which would have worked way better. I think some executives and some producers went, well, we need like a recognizable face for the series. People know Master Chief. We have to have Master Chief in it. And so that was sort of like, this became like an amalgamation of those two ideas, and that's why it's kind of muddy and unclear. Um, that being said, I think on its own, if this existed like separate from the games and separate from Master Chief, this wouldn't be like a horrible show.
No, but I
'Cause there's
wouldn't.
some,
It's not a show I would continue watching because it is
no,
woefully generic,
yeah, it's
and it's
generic.
boring. There's
It is boring.
there's
There's
chunks
not
where I
enough to
was
keep you
so
engaged.
bored.
Yeah, the central plot device right now is like the MacGuffin, the Covenant MacGuffin. We don't really know exactly what it is yet, but it is giving Master Chief these flashbacks of his memories before he was kind of indoctrinated into the Spartan program when he was a child, and it's causing him to kind of act against his directive. And I do there are some redeeming qualities to this show, but they just what the core of the show just runs so counter to the pre-established lore and the pre-established characters in the games that it just doesn't work on that level.
This show is so antithetical to the games that it feels like it
Yeah.
has to be on purpose. Like it feels like a giant middle finger.
Well, I don't think it's a middle finger, but the showrunners and the creators and the actors have like made it very abundantly clear that they are not familiar with the source material. Like they've said this. This isn't me speculating.
Then what's the point?
They've said
Just make
this.
your own
Yeah.
sci-fi show.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not
I
going to
agree.
adapt something, then don't do it and do something original.
Yeah,
this
that's
this
why I'm
show
saying,
wants.
like, they should have.
Go ahead. Oh, I was
I
going
was
to say
just, I,
this show so desperately wants to be The Expanse. It's not even funny.
yeah, yeah, and it wants to be the Mandalorian too. I think. I think it's trying to cop off a lot of like the recently popular, successful sci-fi shows, and it.
Because like this
That's
show
why it
is
really
just
needs to
straight
be
up
its
The
own thing.
Expanse. It's trying so hard to be The Expanse.
Yeah, yeah, I get a lot of echoes of the Expanse, especially in the
Especially
second
like
episode when they go.
the asteroid place.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like this is just The Expanse. It's not even. They're not even trying to make anything original here.
the thing is, like, the core story of, I'd say, like, the first Halo game, if you're just gonna focus on the first Halo game, there's not really enough story, in my opinion, to fill up an entire series. Maybe an entire season if you did it in like 6 episodes or something
Well,
short.
no, the show should be Halo 1, 2, and 3. It should be the Halo trilogy, and it shouldn't be a show. It should be 3 movies. It should have never been a show.
Yeah, it works better as the pacing of that story and the pacing of the games works far better as a movie. There's not really enough there to stretch it out into a series, in my
No.
opinion. Now, I do think you could make a Halo series, but I think it would have to be separate from, the story of the games.
Yeah.
Like we're saying, it would have to be a prequel, or it'd have to be something else entirely, or it would have to be something that is its own separate story that's like tangentially related to the games. And this doesn't really do any of that, and it's kind of
No.
just a muddy mess as far as like its canon. And how it fits in with the pre-existing Halo universe. Basically, it doesn't. It's just its own thing, and it doesn't mirror the games at all, other than like some of the references and the settings and the characters.
It's barely. And like, what's frustrating is they replace good stuff in the games with bland generic stuff.
Yeah,
It's like if you're gonna replace something, at least try and do something interesting.
I think there are some redeeming qualities to this show, but there's also moments that just make me like scratch my head. I'm gonna cite the moment where the elites attack Madrigal.
Oh, I hated
First off,
that moment.
First off, I think one thing that the show is doing pretty well so far that we don't get a lot in the games is showing like the human element beneath the UNSC. Like we're seeing like people that actually inhabit this world and live in this world, which is interesting. You don't really get a lot of that in the games, and so you're kind of
Yeah.
seeing how it affects, the population that is not directly involved in the conflict. I think that's maybe one of the stronger elements of the show. I think that being said, the elements that focus more on like the UNSC and the Covenant are like the weaker elements of the show. Um,
The
like
they're,
when the
they're
moments,
very
like
they're
the
very generic. It's very much the
yeah,
Expanse. Um, and the problem is that's just not very accurate to the games at all because the UNSC is very much the good guys in the games.
yeah, yeah. This makes it a little bit more like of this kind of gray area where there's like this resistance against the UNSC, and that they're kind of viewed as tyrannical in some sections
Yeah,
of the
in the in
galaxy.
in the games, the insurrectionists only really mentioned in the games, but the insurrectionists in the we'll call it in the canon. We'll call
Yeah,
Halo canon and then show. In Halo canon, the insurrectionists are very much like terrorists and not very good people.
I see. Like the ISIS of the Halo universe, basically.
Kind of. They want to just blow everything up and get rid of order. They're not
Yeah.
like a major threat in the story. They're just kind of what happens before the war with the Covenant.
Okay. I wanted to like kind of circle back to that moment when the Covenant attacks the insurrectionist on Madrigal. Um, some things that like they do well is like I think they kind of do a good job at like setting up the Spartans when they're having conversations about them. Like they have like the somewhat kind of mythical status, you know.
See,
Um,
I hated that because that's not how it is in canon. In canon, the Spartans are viewed as like these like superheroes. Like
Everyone knows them.
they're extremely well respected. Spartans are like a beacon of hope. It's very Star Trekky.
I
But
see.
in the gross Paramount Plus stuff, because they just love their cynical crap, the Spartans are like, oh, they kill people and they're everything in the show is just miserable.
Yeah, yeah. See, I didn't. That's one thing that I'll point out is like you're definitely going to have more insight into like the canon. So when there are things that like I'm just not as familiar with. So
But even
yeah,
in the
feel
games,
free
whenever
to
Chief
chime
shows
in.
up, like everybody's like, yay, the Spartans are
Yeah,
here.
yeah, and that was one thing that was kind of odd to me about this show is he, he's not viewed in that way. I guess I do appreciate that we are. It's kind of weird because the show doesn't seem to have its foot in one camp or the other. Sometimes they talk about Master Chief like he's this very pre-established hero that everyone knows, but then sometimes they act like he's like still like this ranking or low-ranking officer that is not well known and makes
Yeah,
mistakes,
they
and they
can't.
don't
Well,
really like make up their mind.
it's because the stupid show is like so meta, where they know that the
Yeah,
Master Chief is so famous to people, like in real life, it
yeah,
can't make up its mind, and like they're full of crap when they said like, oh, they didn't pay attention to the games because there's certain things in this show that could only be in there if you've played the game, like little details where it's like, no, they had to have played the games. Like, there's no way they didn't. And
somebody.
like, yeah, they
You
can't
know,
make up their mind. Is he a Master Chief petty officer? Isn't he? Is he
yeah.
famous or isn't he? Is
I
he
would
hated or
prefer.
is he loved? Like, they couldn't make up their
Yeah,
mind.
I would prefer just if you're gonna focus on Master Chief in this era, have him kind of be a complete unknown. I would rather him almost not be the leader of this team. I'd rather him just be another member and like show the journey how he becomes a leader and how he becomes well known. That makes
That's
more
another thing
sense
that's
just
so
from an art
frustrating is
perspective.
they have this new team, Silver Team,
Yeah,
and in the games he's the head of Blue Team, and Blue Team the characters are way more interesting. So it's just like they they replace interesting
they mirrored
things
that.
with something that's just generic and bland. Because the Silver Team people in this show are the most bland, boring people. I don't even remember their
Yeah,
names.
they're not really characterized at all or fleshed out.
No, so they keep replacing things with generic, bland versions. It's like,
Yeah,
why? Just keep Blue Team.
I think we should also talk about like the
Can we
big
talk about
moment.
how this show can't decide how violent it wants to be?
Yeah, I
Because like sometimes the violence is like shocking and a bit much, and then other times it's like very mild and PG-13.
I do. There are moments where I appreciate the violence. Like there's the moment when like Covenant attacks and people are getting like their limbs blown off and
That
being
didn't
like
work for me.
evaporated.
It's Halo has never been that kind of violent. It just felt
Well,
super edgelordy and just like we
I
got to
don't
wow
I
the
don't
R-rated crowd in the first minute.
I don't interpret it that way. I think it was more of a narrative device to establish that the Covenant doesn't fuck around and that they're deadly and that they're a formidable threat. I think it worked on that level. I don't think it was really trying to. I don't think it was really trying to be edgy. I think it was more
It
just
was
trying
though
to.
because the first kill is super violent and her limbs get blown off, and then in the next scene people are getting shot with the same lasers and they're just falling down and not blowing up.
Yeah, that could be. I guess just the way I interpret it was they were just trying to show that the Covenant was some kind of formidable threat. I think if they kind of like portrayed like plasma weapons the way that they are portrayed in like Star Wars or something like that, they don't feel as destructive. You know, if someone gets hit by like a plasma weapon in Star Wars and they just kind of fall over, but in this it's like people actually get incinerated and horribly burned and like limbs come off. I think that's as far as a plot device, I think that's effective, but I don't like the way that the elites look in this. A lot of people have talked about that. They look very like kind of like I don't know, too bulky or something.
They're a
They
bit
don't look
chunky.
right.
They're not.
Yeah, they're really
they're
chunky.
not tall enough,
Yeah, they
and
look
not
weird.
they're not thin. My problem is, it's not. I don't think it's actually the elites that look bad. It's the armor.
Yeah, yeah.
The
that's
armor
probably
looks
the
very
part.
wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
But the energy sword looks great. Their
Yeah.
their plasma rifles looked good.
The effects are actually better in this show than I expected. From the trailers, they look bad, but in the show, a lot of the
They're
effects
not
are really
great,
good.
but they're better than I expected.
It definitely it like modulates a lot. There's sometimes where the effects look really really good.
They're
and there's
very
other times where they
inconsistent.
look really bad. They're very inconsistent.
Sometimes the green screen is so bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
Oh.
like some of the guns looked really bad. They're too big. Like they look like toys.
Yeah, some of them look very flat and they don't look real.
Yeah.
You could learn plaque or something. And then a lot of times when they
Also, can we talk
swap
about that
in
first
Spartans
person
from
shot? That was the corniest thing I've ever seen.
the helmet, like the HUD.
Yeah,
Is
when
that what
it's
you're
like
talking
first
about?
person with the gun and it has like the reticle. It was like the corniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, and the thing is, like that could really work and be like effective because that's kind of like the lens through which you play the game. So like adding that in and doing that like on paper is a cool idea if done right, but
It doesn't
it's not
work because
executed very
Doom
well.
tried it back in the day. That Uncharted short film tried doing it. It doesn't work. Anytime you try doing a game view in a movie, it doesn't work because games and movies don't look the same.
No, but I think if they had done it correctly, some first person shots here and there would be cool. But yeah, it's just not really done that well in this. But another thing that I was talking about was when they swap in the Spartans for like CGI doubles, it looks
Oh,
bad.
that looked
Like a lot
bad,
of times
yeah.
when they jump up in the air, like it just
It looks like a Halo 3 cutscene.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but other times, I would say one area that the special effects and the CGI look really good in is like the environments when they show like not really the environments when they show like a landscape shot of like Madrigal or I don't know what the asteroid
They
place
look
was called. When they show
okay.
things like that, they look.
They just to
And
me
it's
they
not
just
like mind blowing.
they just look
but it
like
looks-
every CG city. It's so blah.
Yeah, but at least they look competent. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like, they don't
no,
look
they could
bad.
look. I guess we're fishing for compliments here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, they could look worse, but like, they just look like CG cities, which all look the same to me.
Yeah.
I thought
think-
some of the sets look really good. I thought the inside of the Pelican
do.
looks just like the games. It didn't look silly, but then some sets look bad. It's very inconsistent.
Is I think for the most part though the sets do look pretty good, but yeah, you're right. It is kind of inconsistent. I do appreciate that most of the sets look practical. It doesn't look like a lot of green screen. For the
Yes,
most
it
part.
doesn't.
There
It
are-
doesn't look like the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that at all. So I do appreciate that there's like practical real sets. There's like like interesting camera movement in some of those scenes, like where there's dialogue. It's not just like shot, reverse shot.
Yeah,
There's
it's not-
some movement of the camera within the space that they're filming, and like you can kind of feel that. And like I guess if I had to compare this to like an egregious example, like yeah, it does look a lot better than like the Star Wars prequels. I think on every level it looks
Sure,
better than that,
but
but it's
it
also like
very
20
much
years newer
looks
than
like a
that.
cheap TV show.
Yeah, it
It
does.
has
It
that
doesn't.
very digital, clean look to it.
Yeah, it doesn't have like that cinematic feel that it would
No,
need,
not at all.
and it does feel cheap. There's some scenes where like the Spartan armor looks really good, and there's other scenes where it looks really bad. Like some scenes where it just looks
Yeah,
like plastic, but
the
there's other
boots look
scenes where it looks
terrible.
like I've not really paid attention to the boots.
The boots look like
specifically.
plastic.
Yeah, there's. I think
You know
one
what?
thing
You know
that
what
kinda-
really bothered me, and this is just another
What?
problem I have with this show, which is actually not game related at all. It's just the inconsistency of this show. Is when he first takes off his helmet, it does like this thing where all these pieces move and then it comes off, and it never does that again. So is that just not necessary, or?
Yeah, I guess maybe they just don't want to show it every time or something. But yeah, you're right. Um,
Also, why
I-
have a suit if he's just not gonna wear it for half the show?
yeah, I think let's just dive into that, him taking off the helmet, because a lot of people have talked about this. And what is the name of the actor who plays Master Chief in this?
Pablo Schreider?
Pablo Schreider.
Not a fan. I think he's pretty bad.
I don't think he's
I blame-
bad, but he's not great.
I blame
It's
the
more
director.
direction. It's
Because the
more
director,
direction
the
and
director
writing.
clearly said, "Hey, I want you to whisper and talk gruff in every scene."
A thing that's worth like noting is his voice doesn't really work as Master Chief. Like
No.
I get that like Steve Downes, like you probably can't get him to like voice over the entire show, and you're probably not gonna get someone that sounds exactly like him.
You know what? I would have
but-
preferred they just ADR'd Steve Downes. So he just never took the
Yeah.
helmet off. It would have been perfect. There you go. If you can ADR
Yeah.
Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, you can do Master Chief. He's wearing a helmet. It's fine.
Yeah, I think.
They ADR
think
Tony
fans-
Stark in the Avengers movies.
Yeah, I
It's
think
fine.
they would have definitely preferred, or fans would have definitely preferred Steve Downes doing the voice. But like, if you're not going to get him, at least get someone who sounds a little bit more like him. To me, it just, and people have compared this to The Mandalorian. It seems like they're really trying to like rip off The Mandalorian with the way that Chief acts, with the way that he talks, his presence.
Yes.
Um,
the only
It's very much like Mandalorian. And
the only
it doesn't
the
work
only
for Master
counter argument I
Chief.
have against that is they've been working on the show for a long time, so I think they actually kind of started some of the stuff before Mando came out. But yes, it's
see.
very much like Mando. It's that stupid, a guy who wears a helmet should whisper all the time. It's just it's
Yeah.
bad.
It works for Mandalorian. It doesn't work for this.
It works for Mandalorian because
Steve-
it's an original character.
Yeah, exactly. And Steve Downes, like his voice has so much presence. You know
Well,
what I
he doesn't
mean?
whisper. He
You're
just
just
has
I'm
Steve
Master Chief.
Downes' voice.
I'm Master Chief. I'm Master Chief.
yeah,
yeah,
like Steve
Steve
Downes
Downes,
doesn't
I'm Master
whisper.
Chief.
Yeah,
And I get that that is a little bit like guttural and kind of like campy, and it's kind of meant to be. And you don't have to like lean fully into that, but you need to do something more than I'm a whisper. I'm Master Chief. Yeah, that
just-
doesn't work.
they
Doesn't
just so. I guess we'll get into the characters because we're talking about that. This show gets Master Chief so unbelievably wrong
work. Yeah.
that it just angers me. I don't want to sound like an angry fanboy, but like,
I
This is-
think there's an earnest attempt to humanize Master Chief, and I appreciate that attempt. But the way it's executed is just.
but
Not
they're
there.
no, they're
I-
they're giving him all the wrong qualities. Like Chief is
Yeah.
not cold and like a jerk in the games.
Yeah.
He's like
Yeah.
a hero and like a selfless, like heroic soldier. And in this, he's just like cold and it's just everything
Yeah.
about it is just miserable.
Yeah, I think if they wanted to present Chief in a different light, they should have had, like we said, like prequel Chief before he has all this kind of this reputation
He's
surrounding
fresh out of
him.
the Spartan training program.
Yeah, we need like a young, unsure Master Chief. and
Yeah,
this
that's
is
fine.
Not
It's
young
whatever.
enough or unsure enough. Yeah.
The
like I said, I
first
think-
the first time I turned off the first episode is when the
Oh, yeah.
battle of Magical finishes, and Chief is like, "No survivors," and he goes, "One survivor." And she's like, "Please help me," and he just walks away and says nothing. I
Yeah, that
completely
was
turned
weird.
it off then because that's not his character at all. Like not even
Yeah, that
close. To me, this is the equivalent of Zack Snyder's Batman. where it's
Well,
just
and
like this is not the character at all, and this just angers me. It just upsets
the
me.
thing that's weird in this is that what we would consider morally right, like him helping the survivor, he only does because his brain is like altered with this device. It's not like he just does it out of his own moral code. You know what I mean? It's like he's altered into doing what we consider morally right,
Yeah, and
even
it's
if it's like
very
counter to the
muddy
objective.
because
Yeah,
so in the canon, Spartans are not cybernetic; they're just genetically enhanced.
yeah.
In this show, they're not really clear if it's cybernetics or not.
Well, they
They
don't.
mention
Well, the
hormonal
Spartans.
treatment, and they just say
Yeah.
they say sci-fi mumbo jumbo.
Well, the Spartans in the games are like huge. They're like 7 feet tall, and in this they look like normal people,
Yeah,
really, for the
Chief is
most
about
part.
7 feet tall. I'm fine with him not being 7 foot. It's totally fine. I don't really care.
Yeah, it's not really a big deal.
He's tall enough in this. Like he's taller than all the Marines, and that's fine.
Yeah,
But yeah, in the
but
canon,
yeah,
they're not cybernetic at all. They're just genetically enhanced.
yeah. And this they don't. They have not like. That's the problem with the show is like it simultaneously relies on you being familiar with the pre-established lore,
And then
and
also
so it
says
doesn't
"F you" to
explain
the
a lot of things.
pre-established lore.
Exactly. So it doesn't explain a lot of things. Like if somebody were to come into this and they are not familiar with Halo at all, they're going to be very lost. This show does not really take the time to expand on the concepts, expand on the various facets of the world,
No,
to
like
expand on the Spartans. It doesn't take that
it
time that
doesn't
it
tell you
needs to be
why you
taken.
should think the Spartan program's bad. Like all the
Yeah.
characters think it's kind of like weird, but nowhere are you told why because you only know it if you know the canon.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about, we're talking about the characters, is Halsey in this.
The
Um,
only good character, the only accurate character in the show.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I think as her performance is good. I think
It's serviceable.
sort
It's a
of
bit wooden.
her yeah, but it's fine for like
Yeah,
that character.
it's
But the thing
fine.
that like bothers me, and maybe you can like provide more clarity on this, is that she seems way too young. Because
Yes.
Halsey in the game is kind of like this maternal figure in a
Yes.
sense, but in this she's like almost the same age as Master Chief, and there's almost like a sexual tension between
Yeah,
them
that was
sometimes.
weird. No, in the game she's older than John by like
Yeah.
at least 10 years.
Well, logically, she would have to be because I mean, if she's like heading up this program, like
Well, she
you
she
would
created
think,
the Spartan program in like
yeah,
2020 something. So,
she seems too young. That being said, I think her character is like one of the few characters in this that does service to the character from the games.
she's the
but
only accurate one so far. Even the wardrobe,
yeah,
she has like the white coat and the however in the canon she does not work for the UNSC.
I see.
She
She's
works
like
for
just like a separate scientist.
she
like a
works for
contractor.
ONI. The Spartan program is created by ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, which I guess is technically part of the UNSC,
Okay.
but ONI is independent, kind of like the CIA is in real life.
I see. I
And the
see.
Office of Naval Intelligence is not in this show whatsoever.
I see. I guess maybe they wanted to streamline things.
I guess.
I didn't know.
it's
I didn't know
whatever.
that Miranda Keynes was her daughter. I didn't know that till I watched this.
Was Jacob Keyes' daughter?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't know that he was Halsey's, or that she was Halsey's daughter.
No, she isn't.
They said that in the show that she was. And then
I
looked
just
up, and
watched it. They didn't say that.
They, hold on, I looked this up. I was confused when I looked it up, and then they said I found that apparently it's Halsey's daughter. Let me find it.
I don't. They did not say that. I just watched it. I don't remember them saying that. In the canon, she's very much not Halsey's daughter.
See, that's why I was confused. Give me a second. I'm gonna find this.
All right. This obviously has nothing to do with race. I don't care if you change a character's race. Doesn't really matter. But Jacob Keyes is not similar to his in-game character at all.
I don't know who that. I'm not familiar with that character from.
He's the captain of the Pillar of Autumn in Halo Combat Evolved.
Okay. That's okay. I see why I didn't.
In this, he's called Captain Keyes, but he doesn't serve on a ship, so that doesn't make any sense. Because in the UNSC, you're a captain of it. Whatever. They just don't care. This is the most lazy Frankenstein together thing I've ever seen.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure this Yeah, she's Halsey's daughter. Commander Miranda Keyes, born Miranda Halsey, was the daughter of the late Captain Jacob Keyes and Dr. Catherine Halsey.
I don't remember who. Hold on.
I think this is canon within the games too.
Oh yes, yes. No, no, yeah. In canon, she's Halsey's daughter. Yeah, that's right. I don't remember them saying she's Halsey's daughter in the show.
Yeah, Commander, his name's Commander Keyes. He talks about it. He's like, "Oh, you're like your mother," and then what's the Indian woman's name?
I don't remember.
The
Admiral something something.
yeah, she also referenced that Miranda was Halsey's daughter. I was like, did I misinterpret that? No, she's Halsey's daughter. Yeah, I had no idea until I watched this that she was Halsey's daughter, and then yeah, it seemed like they could do more with that.
They
I
do
mean,
nothing with that.
yeah, yeah, that's why it's kind of weird. And I remember I had to look it up after they said it. I was like, is that part of the games? I've never heard that.
I almost forgot that was part of the games.
So another thing I wanted to ask about in this, they're setting up Cortana as being like a clone of Halsey. Is that a thing in the games?
That who is a clone Halsey?
Like that they're developing Cortana through like a clone,
No,
like
that's
Halsey
not in
has
the
made a
canon
clone
at
of
all.
herself? I didn't think so.
So in the canon, Cortana is copied from Halsey's brain, but she's an AI.
Yeah.
There's no cloning. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
They
That's
didn't.
why I
They
was
did not
confused
explain
on
that at
this.
all. They were just like, "You need a biological thingy." It's like, wait, why? It's a computer.
Yeah, yeah. They said like she had to like flash clone like a human or something in order to make Cortana.
Even though
And I was
Cortana's
like, I don't.
an AI, so how does that make any
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. I don't know. That I was
Yeah,
confused on that
that
too.
was stupid.
And so this is why Cortana looks so fucking weird in this show because I pieced it together. They took the actress that played Halsey and they created like a digital version of her and just made her hair black, and that's what Cortana is. And if you look at Cortana, that's clearly like what it is and why she looks so unnatural. And
I
weird.
mean, I understand the reasoning because she's a copy of Halsey's brain, but like, it just looks
Yeah.
bad. I mean, we haven't seen it yet.
It
We've
does
only
look
seen the
bad.
trailer, and the trailer
It looks
looks
bad in the trailer.
terrible.
Yeah, why not just find like an actress that looks like at least kind of like Cortana and
Just make it a CG character. It's an AI. Who cares?
yeah, you could.
She's not real.
Yeah, weird choice. Weird choice.
And also, if they're gonna
another thing-
ADR Jen Taylor as Cortana over
Yeah,
a live action actress, why can't they just do Steve Downes as Chief?
yeah, it's weird. It's just so many weird decisions in this show, and I think they said like I read this interview with.
Is this just an
Pablo
actor who thinks he
Schreiber.
has his big break? This is his Mandalorian.
No, I don't know about that necessarily, but I read an interview with him, and he was like, in order to like understand and humanize the character, it's important that he like takes off his mask and everything like that. And I'm like, no, just from like a narrative and intrigue perspective.
Have you
that's
not
something
seen
that
The
you don't
Mandalorian?
blow. Yeah, it's like that's not something you blow your wad on like the end of the first episode. I mean, like, and you that's like you're kind of they're not understanding the point of Master Chief. It's like beneath his exterior, yeah, he is still a human and he cares about humanity. And that idea
the
is
games-
better illustrated.
The
if
games
he
do
doesn't
that
take
just
the helmet
fine,
off.
and we don't see his face.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point. Is like you don't need to see his face. Like you know what I'm saying? Like
Chief
yeah,
speaks with
I
his
guess-
actions.
Exactly. And if you show his face, you're kind of undercutting that idea. Like the whole point of humanizing him without seeing his face is that you're able to humanize him through his actions and through his dialogue. And like that's kind of like one thing that like, the Mandalorian
Honestly,
does pretty well.
I think they're full of crap, and I think they're lying. I think it's
Yeah.
way more simple than that. I think the actor just didn't want to wear a helmet all the time.
I think more so. I'm gonna go even more cynical than that. I think they just wanted everyone to be like, "Oh my God, Master Chief takes his helmet off." You know what I mean?
Well, they
think
knew
that's
they were
what
going to
they
upset
wanted.
people because it's the one rule of Halo you don't break.
Yeah.
They haven't
I
shown
don't
his
think you
face
ever-
in 26 years, 25 years.
No, and you don't really ever need to.
It's the one rule.
Yeah. It works in like the Mandalorian. It doesn't work here, and they don't seem to fundamentally understand that which I think they have like
No.
a fundamental lack of understanding about the characters in the world and what makes them work. And
I
it's
don't.
just kind
Yeah,
of glaringly
I don't
obvious.
know if it's an non-understanding or they just don't care.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. One thing I wanted to bring up too that doesn't make any sense is like that weird human lady that's hanging out with the Covenant that they're taking
I don't
orders
know what that
from.
is. That's not
I'm
in the
like, that doesn't.
canon.
No, it's not at all. Like even I know that, and it's like the Covenant have like this really deep seated hatred for humanity. Like they kind of view humanity as like being parasites, and they have absolutely no regard for humanity whatsoever. So they're not going to be taking orders and like putting this like weird human character like on a pedestal. I'm like, this doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Um,
I,
that
I don't have
I
an
think
answer
what they're
for
trying
you.
to do, I think they're gonna be like, oh, that's a Forerunner clone or something, and we worship and take orders. I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but it's
I don't know
dumb. It
what they're
doesn't
gonna
make
do. I mean,
sense.
Forerunners don't look like humans at all, but
No, they don't. But I don't know what they're either. It was like a
can
human
we
that
also
they like
talk about how
indoctrinated into the Covenant. I
the
don't know. It's
MacGuffin
dumb.
is like the cheapest looking styrofoam prop I've ever seen?
Yeah, and like the MacGuffin in this seems just really unnecessary. There's enough story going on in the Halo universe to where you don't need to rely like on a MacGuffin. Um, it's just a really odd choice. It just feels very lazy. Cortana's kind of a MacGuffin in the games, but there's so many layers to like she's a character in and of herself that like
No,
you
she's an
don't.
important character. She's not even really
Yeah,
a MacGuffin.
exactly. No, I mean I don't think so either. Um, she's like maybe the closest thing in the series I can think of that you could
I'm
call that,
sure.
but
I
like
guess actually the MacGuffin in Halo is the Halo ring,
yeah, they
technically.
kind of are. They kind of are the MacGuffin in a way, but like they're interesting and they're not like something that you can like take with you and like carry around.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're these
No, exactly.
massive planetary rings. It's also weird that like
I
I don't
don't
know
remember how the
sh-
Covenant find the ring in the canon. I think it's.
the
Ah,
show does a really poor job at explaining the lore of the universe. Meanwhile, like working against the lore, it is such like a mixed bag. Like I think there are people that working on this show that genuinely care about the universe and are like sprinkling little like Easter eggs
there
and
has
like
to be because some of
bits
the
of
sets
care.
and the design of stuff is like, yeah,
Exactly. There's clearly some people who care, but I think the problem is like the showrunners and the writers like don't know and don't care, and that just like no matter how much you nail those sets, and no matter how much you try to like pay attention to the small details, like the core of the story and the core of like the the narrative is just kind of broken and it doesn't really work. And again, this show would work so much better if it was just like a prequel or just a story with its own character divorced from Master Chief, because it just doesn't work. Like this show would work so much better if like Master Chief was maybe like a character in it, but not like the main character in it. Um, it just, and again, I think the reason that Master Chief is the main character is just, I think I
it
genuinely
sells. That's why.
believe, yeah, I genuinely believe the show was probably conceptualized and written as Master Chief not being the main character, but in order to sell the show, they needed like the recognizable, um, figure that represents, the mascot for Halo. They're like, we have to put Master Chief in there. We got to. It's like you really don't have to. I think people would kind of be more interested, honestly, if you didn't, because then you also run into this trap where like if you don't portray Master Chief 100% right, you're gonna piss people off. Whereas if you have your own character within that universe, you have
You can
more
do whatever you
freedom
want.
to exactly. Um, it's like just like these very like fundamental concepts. I just this feels like a show written by a committee, to be honest.
It's very hollow and generic. It's trying real hard to be The Expanse, and this is what Paramount Plus does. Like all their shows are pretty terrible.
What other shows do they have?
Oh, they got the new Star Trek shows, which are all terrible.
Yeah, those are bad.
They
Oh
did.
yeah,
They
you
tried
you
doing
are
this.
right.
They tried doing The Stand, and they failed miserably at that.
I don't know what
Um,
that is.
Stephen King book.
Okay.
They're trying so hard to just get their big break, and they keep like there's so much similar between this Halo show and the crappy Star Trek shows.
Yeah, there really is. I kind of forgot to like make that connection in my brain that yeah, CBS, Paramount, yeah, that they're
They're
doing
trying really hard to
this.
make their thing, and they're just failing.
Everything they make looks so so damn cheap.
It
You know,
does.
this new
It
Star
has
Trek
that
show looks
like
cheap. Picard is
contrasty
awful.
digital look.
Yeah,
The stand
I
actually
don't
looked really
know.
good, but everything else kind of was bad.
I think a lot of it is the showrunners
Oop.
and like the producers and writers they're attaching to these projects. Just because, like,
It's weird
here's the
because
thing:
the
if this,
showrunner for this show is Kyle Killen, and he made that show Awake, and that show was great.
I'm not, I'm not familiar with that.
Awake is about this cop who's in a car accident, and he's living in two different lives. So
Oh
he'll be with his son
yeah,
who survived and the wife died, and then he wakes up the next morning and he's with his wife and the son died.
I
And it's
remember that.
really,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really
yeah.
good show. It only lasted like a season or two. I think a season. Um, so maybe a guy who made a very small sci-fi show is not the guy to choose for Halo, but
No, no. It just the writers just it's clear that like they don't understand the source material,
no, no.
and it's just clear that like a lot of the people involved don't understand the source material, and like no matter how much, it's kind of like the new Star Wars movies, like the new trilogy, like clearly the production is there for those movies, but like the people who made those movies clearly do not understand like the source material of Star Wars and like what makes it good. It's kind of the same thing here. Like no matter how much care and detail you put into the production and the sets, if the people making the story do not fundamentally understand what makes the story good and what's important about it, then it's just destined to fail. And I think this will go for another season because they already greenlit it for one more season beyond this. But um, I don't think it'll really go past that. I think fans have kind of overwhelmingly hated it. I
I
kind of
don't
feel
know. I
bad
don't
for
know a
even
single.
watching it.
I don't know a single fan who likes it.
I feel bad for watching it. Like we only watched it so we could review it, but I feel bad like contributing to their like numbers and their viewership.
Oh,
Um,
I won't be watching any more episodes. I have no interest.
yeah, I won't be watching
Especially
any
now
more of
that
it either.
We're going to be reviewing this next week. But especially now that Moon Knight is out. I care way more about that.
I'm interested in it. Yeah, the trailer and Oscar Isaac being attached to it has me intrigued, and I've always heard good things about the character in those comics.
Tell you
So
what. We're about to hit the 45-minute mark, which is usually when we start wrapping things up. So I'll just leave you a little taste.
okay,
First episode of Moon Knight.
yeah,
You get to guess whether or not I liked it.
I'm gonna say you liked it.
I thought it was fantastic.
Okay, okay, yeah,
We'll leave it at that.
yeah, I look forward to watching it then. Is it?
Or at least
How
it
many
was
episodes
definitely
are out?
fantastic compared to watching Halo. So,
Yeah, and like
and that premieres Wednesday nights, but I'm busy Wednesdays, so I watch them on Thursdays. And
I
Halo
see.
comes out Thursdays, so there's no reason for me to watch Halo when Moon Knight is out.
Yeah, I guess if I had to sum up my feelings on Halo, I do think there are some redeeming qualities. I do appreciate some of the things they are attempting to do. I should highlight that word attempting
Can we talk about
because
how
it's not
bad the
always
music
there.
is in the show?
Oh yeah, we really should talk about that.
There's
Like
no
you have
Halo theme anywhere. There's no music
no
from the games at all, and the music we
no,
get is the most generic synth crap.
and why not just hire Marty O'Donnell to do the music?
I
I mean, why
don't know.
not?
It's
He
the
would
most
do it.
generic music.
He wouldn't cost that much. I mean, like he's an amazingly accomplished composer, but he's not like John Williams. Like you could get him to do the show.
If
Like
I were Marty, I wouldn't want this on my resume.
he might have turned it down. He might have like seen their pitch for the show and been like, no, I'm good. But even still, why not get what's his name, Graham Coker? I think this is who did the music for the new one and like the Ori games. Is that his name, Graham Coker?
Oh, it's a few different guys, but yeah, it's somebody like ugh.
Even get him. Get anybody. But yeah, the music in the show is like really generic, and it's like
It sounds like
you
a
have such,
factory
like,
made it,
yeah, and you
like
have
a
such this-
robot made it,
You have this iconic body of work to pull from as far
and
as
you
like
choose
the
not
music
to use it.
goes. Yeah, like even like the composer doing the show is not like pulling themes or motifs from that music or
No,
anything.
there's
You know,
nothing. I don't understand it.
such a missed opportunity
What
there.
was
Like,
their reasoning behind it?
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it'd be like making a Mario movie and you don't use like any of the Mario music. Like you know that movie's gonna use some of the Mario music. Um, if it doesn't, then we'll be having a discussion about that too. But yeah, it's just like it's such like a no-brainer. Like I don't understand that at all.
I don't know. The show is irredeemable. I have no interest in continuing it.
Yeah,
What
I'm not
about
gonna
you?
watch any more of it.
No.
I'm not gonna
No.
watch any more of it either. I'm not interested to see where it goes. I don't really like Master Chief in this. I don't like the cynical angle they're taking with that character. I don't like really the cynical angle they're taking with the world. I think it's just subpar. I think it's really disappointing. I think like the first like on-screen like it's not like the first, but like the first like full-fledged on-screen um appearance of this world and this universe like really deserved a lot better and really deserved a
Yeah,
lot
it
more
did.
care and
Yeah,
passion.
the
And
show
this
just
just
makes me
feels like
sad.
yeah, it feels like a cynical product, and I don't know why in the world they chose CBS to make this show. Like,
Well, this was
because it
going
was
to be a
originally like
Showtime show.
yeah, and even then I'm like, I don't know if I trust Showtime either. It's like really the
No.
only people who could make this would have been HBO, and if they must have turned it down because they pitched it to HBO, and HBO probably turned it down probably because they were like, we already got Game of Thrones, we don't want to do anything that big.
Honestly,
Um,
I think Disney/Fox would have done a good job actually.
Honestly, I mean, yeah, I mean, it seems like
I
obvious
think
because
Halo
Disney's
would have been a
doing all the
very
Star
good like
Wars stuff.
20th century Fox movie.
Yeah, I think at least if Disney did it, like you would get the pacing right. I think you would at least get the energy right. I mean, the production would be, probably phenomenal. That's one thing that they at least do very well is like the production's always very good. Um,
I'm sad we'll
it
never
wouldn't
get
be
Peter
so
Jackson's
cynical
Halo.
and like edgy. Yeah, I know, right? Like Peter Jackson's Halo will never come to fruition. Yeah, it's very sad. It is very sad.
Instead, we got a
I
turd.
Yeah, and another thing that we should talk about is like this show just came out like at least 10 years too late, like 15 years too late. Like it's past the peak of
Oh yeah,
Halo's
Halo's not popular like
popularity.
it used to be.
No, and like you can make an argument that like, well, 15 years ago the technology wasn't there to make a good Halo series. It's like, okay, well yeah, then
No.
don't make a series, make a movie.
Make a movie.
You could have made a good movie about it 15 years ago. Yeah, just such a weird. It's gonna be a weird case study going forward of like how not to adapt a video game.
How not to adapt to
Series.
anything, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't really have a lot more to say about that.
No,
I
I
feel
don't.
like
I don't recommend it. If you're not into Halo, I still don't recommend it because it's
Oh yeah,
just bland and generic.
there's one thing I wanted to point out that was just like a what the fuck moment for me is like when Quan and all her friends at the beginning are like about to take like mushrooms in the forest and like trip balls. I'm just like, what? What's the point of this? Like, what's the point? Why are they about to like trip balls? Like,
I completely forgot
why?
about that.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm just like, why is this even in here? Like, why can't
I-
they just be like out hanging out in the forest or something?
I
And
don't
then like
know.
the attack
I
starts.
don't know.
They have to be like tripping balls on like space mushrooms. Like, what the fuck?
Edgy Paramount crap.
Yeah, that was dumb, really dumb. And I guess that kind of perfectly summates the show.
Pretty
It's,
much.
some summation of the show.
Well, we don't.
Yeah,
recommend
I would
it.
not recommend it. I couldn't recommend it to just like a sci-fi fan. I couldn't recommend it to a Halo fan. I couldn't recommend it to general audiences. I can't really recommend it to anybody. It's not the
No.
worst thing ever made. There are glimmers of competency here and there, but there's not enough to carry it, and it's
Well, no.
overall just not a compelling show.
No.
Nope. Nope. Okay, that's all I have to say about it.
Well, where can the good people find you?
They can find me at Daddy D Rock on YouTube or the Daddy D Rock on Twitter. And yeah, where can I
Alright.
find you?
You can find me at the Bone Shackles on Twitter, on Twitch, Bone Shackles, and then on our YouTube. We'll have another episode
Yeah.
next Monday where we'll be talking about Moon Knight. And you know what? Maybe we'll
Yeah.
be drinking margaritas. Be Moon Knight Margarita Monday.
Oh, nice. That's a good idea.
All
That's a
right. Well,
good idea.
just live long and whatever. Don't watch Halo.
Yeah, don't watch Halo.